The night before D-Day, none of us could sleep. We were packed into the troop transport ships, hundreds of men crammed below deck, and the channel was rough. The ship pitched and rolled. Men were vomiting into their helmets, onto the floor, onto each other. The smell was overwhelming. But it wasn't just seasickness keeping us awake. It was fear. Pure, simple fear of what was coming in the morning. I'd been in England for 6 months by then, training, waiting, preparing for something we all knew was inevitable. The invasion, Operation Overlord, they called it. The big push to liberate Europe. Every soldier in England knew it was coming. We just didn't know when or where. Then in early June, they moved us to the marshalling areas, sealed us in behind barbed wire. No communication with the outside world. That's when we knew it was close. Days away, maybe hours. The officers briefed us on June 5th, showed us maps, aerial photographs, models of the beach. Our objective was Omaha Beach, they said. One of 5 landing zones along the Normandy coast. Intelligence said the beach was lightly defended. Mostly Czech conscripts and old men, they told us. The bombardment would destroy the German positions. The naval guns would pound them. The Air Force would soften them up. It would be tough, they admitted, but manageable. Get across the beach, take the bluffs, push inland. Simple. Sergeant Miller, who'd been with us since basic training, he didn't look convinced. He was older than most of us, had seen combat in North Africa. When the briefing ended, I heard him mutter to another sergeant, "Light defenses my ass." We loaded onto the landing craft around 0300 hours on June 6th. LCVPS, landing craft, vehicle, personnel. 30 men packed into each one like sardines. The ramp in front, steel sides, a coxswain in back steering us toward the beach. The channel was still rough. Waves crashed over the sides of the landing craft, soaking us. Cold Atlantic water in June. We bailed constantly, but more water kept coming in. Some men were seasick again. Others prayed. I just held my rifle and tried not to think about what was coming. Around us in the darkness, thousands of ships, the largest invasion fleet in history, though we couldn't see much of it in the pre-dawn blackness. Just shapes and sounds, engines rumbling, metal creaking, men shuffling and coughing and whispering prayers. The bombardment started around 0550. The battleships opened up, their big guns firing at the shore. The noise was incredible, even from miles away. Then the bombers came over, wave after wave, dropping their payloads on the German positions. The flashes lit up the sky. We could see the coast of France burning. "Those poor bastards," someone said, meaning the Germans. We all figured they were getting annihilated. How could anyone survive that kind of bombardment? We'd find out soon enough how wrong we were. As dawn broke, I could see the beach for the first time. A long stretch of sand, bluffs rising behind it, smoke from the bombardment drifting across everything. It looked quiet, peaceful almost, except for the smoke. The landing craft formed up into waves. We were in the second wave, supposed to land at 0700 hours. The first wave would secure the beach, we'd reinforce them, then push inland. That was the plan. Around 6:30, the first wave started toward shore. We watched them go, dozens of landing craft heading for the beach. The naval bombardment lifted. The Air Force pulled back. Everything went quiet for a moment. Then the German guns opened up. We were still 1,000 yards out, but we could see it. Shells landing among the landing craft. Explosions in the water. Some of the boats just disappeared, hit directly by artillery. Others made it closer before we lost sight of them in the smoke and spray. The radio chatter started coming through. Frantic voices, calls for medics, reports of heavy casualties. The first wave was getting slaughtered. Our coxswain looked back at us, his face pale. "Jesus Christ," he said. "Jesus Christ." Lieutenant Harrison, our platoon leader, was in our boat. He was young, maybe 22, fresh from officer training. He tried to keep his voice steady when he spoke. Remember your training. Stay low, move fast, get off that beach. Someone laughed. Not a happy laugh. A bitter, scared laugh. Get off the beach, he repeated. Sure, Lieutenant. We'll just run right through those machine guns. Shut up, Wilson, Miller snapped. Save it for the beach. We were getting closer now, maybe 500 yards out. The German fire was constant. We could hear bullets hitting the water around us, see the splashes. Artillery shells landing nearby, throwing up huge columns of water. The landing craft next to us took a direct hit. Just exploded. Pieces of metal and men blown into the air. Gone in an instant. Oh, God, someone whispered behind me. Oh, God, oh, God, oh, God. I wanted to tell him to shut up, but I was thinking the same thing, praying the same prayer. Please, God, let me survive this. Please. 300 yards. The bullets were hitting our landing craft now, pinging off the metal ramp. Men pressed themselves low. The coxswain was hunched down, steering with one hand, the other arm wrapped around his head. 200 yards. I could see the beach clearly now. Bodies everywhere. Bodies floating in the water. Bodies on the sand. Burning vehicles. Wounded men crawling. The first wave had been destroyed. Absolutely destroyed. And we were heading right into the same hell, 100 yards. 30 seconds, the coxswain yelled. I gripped my rifle tighter. It was wet from the spray. My hands were shaking. Around me, men were making the sign of the cross, kissing pictures of their girls, whispering final prayers. 50 yards. The ramp was going to drop any second. When it did, we had to get out, had to run through the water, through the bullets, across that beach. Had to. The landing craft lurched as it hit something, a sandbar maybe, or an obstacle. We weren't all the way in, but we couldn't get closer. This is it, the coxswain shouted. I gotta drop the ramp. Lieutenant Harrison stood up, tried to look brave. Let's go. For dash. The ramp dropped. Machine gun fire tore through the opening before Harrison could finish his sentence. He went down first, hit multiple times. Just collapsed. The men behind him fell too, cut down in the first burst. The rest of us tried to push back, away from the ramp, but there was nowhere to go. We were trapped in a metal coffin with one exit, and that exit was a stream of bullets. Someone pushed me. I stumbled forward, stepped over Harrison's body, over other bodies. Then I was at the ramp, at the edge, and there was nothing to do but jump. I jumped into the water and into hell. The water was deeper than I expected. I went under completely, weighted down by my pack, my rifle, all the equipment they'd loaded us with. 60, 70 pounds of gear dragging me down into the cold Atlantic. I kicked frantically, fought my way to the surface, gasped for air. Bullets were hitting the water all around me, making sharp, cracking sounds, little geysers of spray. Men were screaming. Some were drowning, pulled under by their equipment. Others were hit before they could even get their heads above water. I started moving toward shore. Had to. Couldn't stay in the water. The beach was maybe 50 yards away, but it looked like 50 miles. Every step was a struggle against the current, against the weight, against the terror that wanted to freeze me in place. A shell landed in the water nearby. The concussion hit me like a wall, threw me sideways. My ears rang. Couldn't hear anything but a high-pitched whine. Couldn't tell if I was hit or just stunned. Kept moving, just kept moving. That's all you could do. One step, then another, then another. Don't think. Don't look around. Just move. The man next to me jerked and fell face first into the water. I didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Stepped past him. Kept going. The water got shallower, waist deep, then knee deep. I was almost to the beach. Almost there. Just a little further. That's when I saw what we were running into. The beach was a killing field. Bodies everywhere. Wounded men lying in the surf, being pushed back and forth by the waves, burning vehicles, destroyed equipment, and the sand itself churned up by explosions, stained dark with blood. The German positions weren't destroyed, weren't even damaged. They were still there, up on the bluffs, in concrete bunkers that the bombardment hadn't touched. Machine gun nests with perfect fields of fire covering every inch of the beach. Artillery positions dropping shells with deadly accuracy. We'd been lied to. The intelligence was wrong. The defenses weren't light. They were strong, professional, lethal. I threw myself down at the water's edge behind a steel beach obstacle. Not much cover, but better than nothing. Bullets pinged off the metal. Sand kicked up around me. I pressed myself as flat as possible and tried to think. Had to get across the beach. Had to reach the sea wall 300 yards ahead. But between here and there was open sand, completely exposed, swept by machine gun fire from multiple positions. Men were trying to cross it. Most were being cut down within yards. Sergeant Miller landed near me, threw himself down behind another obstacle. He was bleeding from his arm, but didn't seem to notice. "We're getting slaughtered," he yelled over the noise. "We gotta move." "Move where?" I shouted back. "Anywhere but here." He was right. Staying at the water's edge was suicide. The tide was coming in. In an hour, there'd be no beach left, just water and the bodies floating in it. We had to move forward or die. More landing craft were hitting the beach. The third wave, the fourth. They were still coming, still unloading men into this hell. The Germans couldn't miss. Every ramp that dropped was met with machine gun fire. Men fell in heaps. The ones who made it out stumbled through the bodies toward shore, only to be hit themselves. The beach was turning red. The water was red. Everything was red and smoke and screaming and death. A tank came ashore from one of the landing craft, an amphibious Sherman supposed to provide fire support. It made it maybe 20 feet before a German anti-tank gun found it. Direct hit. The tank brewed up, black smoke pouring from it. I could hear the crew inside screaming. "We gotta go," Miller yelled. "On 3. Ready?" I wasn't ready. Would never be ready, but I nodded anyway. 1. I gripped my rifle. It was full of sand and water. Probably wouldn't even fire. Didn't matter. Wasn't like I could shoot back at concrete bunkers anyway. 2. I could see the seawall ahead. Other men were huddled there, what looked like maybe 30 or 40 survivors from the first wave. If I could just reach them, just make it that far. 3. We ran. I don't remember much of that run. Just fragments. The sand was soft, hard to run in. I stumbled, caught myself, kept going. Bullets were everywhere, hitting the sand around me, whipping past my head, so close I could feel them. An explosion to my left. Someone screamed, kept running. My lungs burned. My legs felt like lead. The seawall wasn't getting any closer. Felt like running in a dream, where you move but don't get anywhere. 20 yards to go, 15, 10. Something hit me. Felt like being punched in the side, spun me around, knocked me down. I lay there for a second, confused, trying to understand what happened. I'd been shot. The pain came then, white-hot, searing pain in my left side. I looked down, saw blood soaking through my uniform, my blood. "Get up!" Someone was yelling at me. "Get up! Move!" Hands grabbed me, dragged me. I tried to help, tried to move my legs. Everything hurt. Everything was noise and smoke and pain. Then I was at the seawall, pressed against the concrete with dozens of other men. Relatively safe for the moment. The wall blocked the direct machine gun fire from the bunkers above, though artillery shells were still landing all around us. I looked at my wound. The bullet had gone through my side, just above my hip. Through and through, which was lucky. If it had hit something vital, I'd already be dead. As it was, I was bleeding badly, but maybe I'd survive. A medic appeared, worked his way down the line. Kid couldn't have been more than 19. He looked at my wound, tore open a pack of sulfur powder, dumped it in. I nearly screamed from the pain. "You'll live," he said. "Press this against it." He handed me a bandage, then moved on to the next man. He had 100 wounded to deal with and not enough supplies for any of them. I pressed the bandage against my side and looked around. The men at the seawall were a mix of units, survivors from multiple waves all huddled together. Some were wounded like me. Others were in shock, just staring at nothing. A few were crying. Most were just exhausted, broken, wondering what the hell we were supposed to do now. We'd made it across the beach, but we were pinned down. The seawall gave us cover from direct fire, but we couldn't stay here. Couldn't go forward. The bluffs were too steep, too well defended. Couldn't go back. That meant crossing the beach again, running through the same hell we'd barely survived the first time. We were trapped. The entire invasion, thousands of men, trapped on a beach and being systematically destroyed. I thought about my father then. He'd fought in the First War at places like Belleau Wood and the Argonne. He'd told me once that war was hell, that nothing could prepare you for it. I'd nodded, thought I understood. I understood now. This wasn't war like I'd imagined. Wasn't brave soldiers fighting honorably. This was slaughter. This was men drowning in the surf, burning in tanks, bleeding out on sand while machine guns cut down anyone who tried to help them. This was Omaha Beach, and I was one of the lucky ones. I was still alive. Time stopped meaning anything. Could have been 30 minutes at that seawall. Could have been 3 hours. Everything blurred together into one continuous nightmare of explosions and screaming and death. The wounded kept arriving. Men who'd been hit crossing the beach, dragging themselves to the wall, leaving trails of blood in the sand. The medics did what they could, but there were too many. Too many wounded, too much blood, not enough supplies. Men died waiting for help that couldn't come fast enough. I kept pressure on my wound and watched the chaos unfold. More landing craft were still hitting the beach, still unloading men and equipment into the meat grinder. Some of the coxswains, seeing what they were driving into, dropped their ramps early, dumping men into deep water. Better to drown than get shot, maybe. At least it was faster. Bodies floated in the surf, hundreds of them, just rolling back and forth with the waves like driftwood. Some were face down. Others stared up at the sky with empty eyes. The tide was coming in, bringing them closer to shore, mixing the living and the dead together in the red water. The German fire never stopped, never even slowed. They had unlimited ammunition up in those bunkers, unlimited fields of fire. Every few minutes, an artillery shell would land among us at the seawall. The concussion would kill some men, wound others. We'd drag the wounded aside, leave the dead where they fell. What else could we do? Next to me, a private from Kansas was crying. Not sobbing, just silent tears running down his face, mixing with the salt spray and blood. He kept saying, "I want to go home. I just want to go home." Over and over, like a prayer. Like if he said it enough times, someone would listen and send him home. Nobody was going home from Omaha Beach. Not today. An officer appeared. A colonel, I think, though it was hard to tell through the smoke and chaos. He was moving along the seawall, yelling at men. "We're going to die here if we don't move. We have to get off this beach." Someone yelled back, "How? They'll cut us down." "They're cutting us down anyway. Better to die trying than die sitting here." He was right, but knowing he was right didn't make it any easier. The bluffs above us were maybe 100 feet high, steep, covered with barbed wire and mines. The Germans had machine guns covering every approach. It was suicide to try climbing them. But staying was suicide too. Slower suicide, but just as certain. A destroyer came in close to shore, dangerously close, risking running aground. Its guns opened up on the German positions, firing almost point blank at the bunkers on the bluffs. The naval gunfire was thunderous, made the ground shake. Some of the German positions went silent, knocked out by direct hits. "That's our chance," the colonel yelled. "Well, they're suppressed. Move! Move now!" Small groups started trying to move up the bluffs, using whatever cover they could find, craters, wreckage, dead ground. It was slow, dangerous work. Men would advance a few yards, then get pinned down by fire, then advance a few more yards. Then someone would hit a mine and the whole group would be scattered. But some were making progress. Slowly, incredibly slowly, some groups were actually getting up the bluffs. Sergeant Miller found me again. His arm was bandaged now, but still bleeding through. "Can you move?" he asked. I nodded. The pain in my side was constant but manageable. I could move. Whether I should move was another question. "Then let's go. We're going up." He'd gathered a group of maybe 15 men, mix of units, whoever was able and willing to try. Some wounded, all exhausted, every one of us scared out of our minds. But the colonel was right. Staying meant dying. Moving meant maybe dying. Maybe was better than certainly. We waited for a pause in the artillery fire. The destroyer was still pounding the German positions. Smoke drifted across the bluffs. Not much cover, but better than nothing. "Go," Miller yelled. We ran for the base of the bluffs, made it maybe 30 yards before the machine guns found us. Bullets kicked up sand all around us. We threw ourselves down behind whatever cover we could find. I landed in a crater, probably from a naval shell. 2 other guys landed next to me. Caught our breath, then moved again. Up a few more yards, down behind more cover, up again, slow, painful progress, buying every foot with fear and blood. The guy next to me stepped on a mine. 1 second he was there, the next he was just gone. Pieces. I was close enough that the blast knocked me down, peppered me with shrapnel. Small wounds, painful but not serious. I barely noticed them. Barely noticed anything except the need to keep moving. We reached a section of bluff that was less steep. A natural depression that provided some dead ground, some shelter from the machine guns. Half our group had made it. The rest were dead or wounded behind us, scattered across the beach. Miller was still with us. So was a lieutenant I didn't know, a couple of privates, a machine gunner who'd somehow carried his weapon all this way. We huddled in the depression and tried to figure out what to do next. Above us, maybe 50 yards up the bluff, was a German position, a machine gun nest in a concrete bunker. We could hear it firing, could see the tracers streaming down toward the beach. It was one of the positions doing the most damage, had probably killed hundreds of our men. "We have to take it out," the lieutenant said. "How?" someone asked. "It's concrete. Small arms won't touch it." "Grenades. Get close enough. Throw grenades through the firing slit." "That's suicide. So is staying here." The lieutenant was right, but nobody wanted to volunteer. Getting close enough to that bunker to throw a grenade meant crossing open ground under fire, meant almost certain death. "I'll go," Miller said quietly. We all stared at him. He was already wounded, already bleeding. He'd done more than anyone could ask. He didn't have to volunteer. "I'll cover you," the machine gunner said. "Draw their fire." "I'll come too," I heard myself say. Don't know why I said it. The wound in my side was bleeding again. I could barely stand, and I was terrified. But Miller was going, and he was my sergeant. "You didn't let your sergeant go alone." Miller looked at me, started to protest, then just nodded. "Okay. You, me, and Patterson here." He pointed at another private. "We go fast, we go together, we throw everything we've got. The rest of you give us covering fire." We checked our grenades. I had 2. Patterson had 3. Miller had 1. 6 grenades total against a concrete bunker. It would have to be enough. The machine gunner set up, started firing at the bunker. Not hitting it, couldn't penetrate the concrete. but making them keep their heads down. The rest of the group fired too, everything they had. "Now!" Miller yelled. We ran up the bluff. My side was screaming in pain, every step agony. Patterson was ahead of me, Miller beside me. The German machine gun swung toward us. I saw the muzzle flash, felt bullets snap past. Patterson went down, hit in the leg. He screamed, tried to get up, couldn't. Miller and I kept going. Had to. 20 yards to the bunker. 15. 10. A grenade sailed past me, Miller's. It bounced off the concrete, fell back, exploded short. Didn't do any damage. I pulled my first grenade, yanked the pin, counted. 1, 2, threw it. It went through the firing slit. The explosion inside the bunker was muffled but definitive. The machine gun went silent. Smoke poured from the opening. We'd done it. Somehow, impossibly, we'd knocked out the bunker. I collapsed next to Miller, both of us gasping for breath. My wound had opened completely, blood soaking through the bandage. Miller's arm was bleeding worse. We were both half dead from exhaustion and blood loss and fear. But we'd done it. Behind us, more men were moving up the bluffs now. With that machine gun nest silenced, they had a route up. Slowly, gradually, the Americans were getting off the beach. It was nearly noon. We'd been pinned down for hours, hundreds, maybe thousands dead on that beach, but we were finally starting to move inland. The invasion wasn't lost, not yet. We were hanging on by our fingernails, but we were hanging on. By early afternoon, we'd clawed our way to the top of the bluffs. Not in any organized fashion, not according to any plan. Just small groups of survivors attacking whatever German positions they could reach, slowly, painfully gaining ground. The fighting at the top was vicious, close quarters, brutal. We'd take one position. The Germans would counterattack. We'd fall back, then push forward again. Every bunker, every trench, every fortification had to be fought for individually. I was running on pure adrenaline by then. The pain from my wound had faded into a dull, distant throb. I'd lost a lot of blood, could feel myself getting weaker, but I kept moving. Had to keep moving. Stop moving and you died. Simple as that. We cleared a trench system. Found German soldiers inside, young men. Some looked barely 18. They surrendered quickly once we were on top of them. Hands up, terrified. We disarmed them, sent them back toward the beach with a guard. Didn't have time or energy to deal with prisoners properly. Just got them out of the way and kept moving. Some positions didn't surrender, fought to the last man. We'd have to grenade them, go in shooting, finish it hand to hand. It was ugly. No glory, no honor, just desperate men trying to kill each other in the mud and smoke. Miller was still with me, still leading despite his wound. He'd tied a tourniquet on his arm, was using his rifle one-handed, refused to fall back, refused medical attention. "I'll get patched up when we're done here," he said, as if we'd ever be done. More men were making it off the beach now. The German defenses were crumbling, not collapsing, but crumbling. Each bunker we took opened another route up. Each machine gun we silenced meant fewer casualties on the beach below, but the cost kept mounting. Patterson, who'd been hit during our assault on the bunker, he didn't make it. Bled out before the medics could reach him. The Kansas kid who'd been crying at the seawall, I saw him later, dead, shot through the head while trying to climb the bluffs. The lieutenant who'd organized our assault took a grenade in a German counterattack. Gone. We'd started the day with a full company. By afternoon, we had maybe 30 men left. And this was being repeated all along Omaha Beach. Entire units destroyed. Whole companies reduced to scattered survivors. Around 1500 hours, we reached the top of the bluffs and could see inland for the first time. Hedgerow country. Small fields separated by thick, ancient hedgerows. Norman countryside that would turn out to be perfect defensive terrain. But that was a problem for tomorrow. Today's problem was securing this beachhead. We pushed inland maybe a mile, set up defensive positions, dug in. Other units were doing the same, creating a thin, fragile perimeter. The Germans were falling back, but they were still out there, still fighting, still dangerous. A runner found us around 1600. Said we were to hold position, that reinforcements were coming up from the beach. The beach had finally been secured. Landing craft were unloading supplies, vehicles, more troops. We'd done it. Somehow, despite everything, we'd established a foothold. But the price, God, the price. I sat in a foxhole, finally allowing myself to stop, and the exhaustion hit like a physical blow. My hands were shaking. My wound was still bleeding, though slower now. My uniform was stiff with dried blood, mine and others. I smelled like smoke and death and fear. A medic found me, different one from the beach. He looked at my wound, shook his head. You should be evacuated. I'm fine. You're not fine. You've lost a lot of blood. You need proper medical attention. Later, after we're sure we're holding... He wanted to argue, but he had too many other wounded to deal with. He gave me more bandages, more sulfur powder, told me to keep pressure on it, then moved on to the next man. As evening came, the firing died down. Not stopped, just decreased. Both sides were exhausted. We'd hold our positions tonight, reorganize, push out in the morning. That was the plan. I could see the beach from my position. Even from a mile away, I could see it. The smoke, the burning vehicles, the bodies, so many bodies. They were still out there, hundreds of them, lying in the surf, on the sand, scattered across that hell we'd somehow survived. Sergeant Miller found me as darkness fell. His arm was properly bandaged now in a sling. He looked as exhausted as I felt. You did good today, he said. I laughed, bitter laugh. I didn't do anything, just survived. That's something. A lot of men didn't. He was right. I'd survived when so many hadn't. Lieutenant Harrison, dead before he even left the landing craft. Patterson, the Kansas kid, thousands of others. They'd died and I'd lived. Why? What made me special? Nothing. Nothing at all. I wasn't braver or smarter or stronger, just luckier. That's all survival was. Luck. Being in the right place when the bullet passed, being behind cover when the shell landed, stepping left instead of right when the mine was on the right. They're saying we lost almost 3,000 men today, Miller said quietly, just on Omaha. 3,000 casualties in one day on one beach. 3,000. The number was too big to process, too big to feel. Each one was a man, someone's son, someone's husband, someone's friend. 3,000 futures ended in a single day. Was it worth it? I asked. Miller was quiet for a long time. I don't know, he finally said. Ask me when we get to Berlin. Maybe then I'll have an answer. He left to check on the rest of the men. I sat in my foxhole and watched the darkness settle over Normandy. Somewhere out there, the Germans were digging in too. Tomorrow we'd start fighting again. Push inland, take more ground, lose more men. This was just the beginning. D-Day was over, but the war wasn't. We had hundreds of miles to go. Months of fighting ahead. More beaches, more fields, more towns, more death. But we'd survived Omaha. That had to count for something. We'd taken the worst the Germans could throw at us, and we'd survived. We'd established the foothold. The invasion would continue from here. Europe would be liberated, eventually, at a cost that was already almost too high to bear. I thought about writing a letter home, telling my parents I was alive. But what would I say? How do you describe Omaha Beach to people who weren't there? How do you explain what it was like to run through that storm of bullets, to watch your friends die, to somehow survive when better men didn't? You can't. The words don't exist. So you just say, I'm fine. Don't worry. Everything's okay. And you carry the truth inside where nobody has to see it. Night fell completely. The guns were mostly silent now. Just occasional shots in the distance. I could hear wounded men calling out in the darkness, medics moving between positions, officers organizing, planning for tomorrow. I closed my eyes but didn't sleep, couldn't sleep. Every time I did, I was back in that landing craft, watching the ramp drop, watching Lieutenant Harrison fall, back in the water, drowning under the weight of my equipment, back on the beach, running through the bullets, feeling the impact as I was hit. So I stayed awake, kept watch, held my rifle, and stared into the darkness and waited for dawn. Tomorrow would bring more fighting, more death, more horror. But I'd survived today. Against all odds, against all reason, I'd survived Omaha Beach. That would have to be enough. My breaking point didn't come on D-Day. Didn't come during the landing, or the fight up the bluffs, or any of the moments when death was closest. It came 3 days later, in a moment that should have been ordinary. We were advancing through the hedgerows, slow, brutal fighting. Every field was a small battle. The Germans would set up in one hedgerow. We'd have to dig them out. Then they'd fall back to the next one. Repeat endlessly. Tanks couldn't maneuver. Air support couldn't see targets. Just infantry slugging it out, field by field, hedge by hedge. We'd taken casualties every day. Not the massive losses of Omaha, but steady, grinding attrition. A sniper would get someone. A mortar would land in a foxhole. A man would step on a mine. Every day we got weaker, more exhausted, more depleted. We'd gotten replacements. Fresh troops from England, wide-eyed and scared. They didn't last long. The hedgerow fighting was unforgiving. You learned fast or you died. Most died. On the third day, we were clearing a farmhouse. Standard procedure. Grenades first, then go in shooting. We'd done it a dozen times already. Miller kicked in the door. We tossed grenades, waited for the explosions, then went in. The farmhouse was empty. No Germans, just a French family. A woman, 2 children. They'd been hiding in the cellar during the fighting. When we threw the grenades, they'd come up to surrender, to show they were civilians. The grenades killed them all. I stood there looking at them. The woman had thrown herself over the children, trying to protect them. Hadn't worked. The shrapnel had torn through all of them. We'd killed them, killed the people we were supposed to be liberating, killed children, innocent children who'd done nothing except be in the wrong place. Miller stood next to me. His face was blank, empty. Jesus Christ, he said quietly. Someone was sick in the corner. Someone else walked out, couldn't look. I just stood there, staring, unable to process what I was seeing. We were the good guys. That's what we'd been told. We were the liberators. We were fighting the Nazis, fighting evil, bringing freedom to Europe. That's what they'd told us. That's what I'd believed. But we'd just killed a mother and her children. We were supposed to be saving them, and we'd killed them. It was an accident, someone said behind me. We didn't know they were there. Accident. As if that word changed anything. As if those children cared about our intentions when they died. We left the farmhouse. Had to keep moving. The war didn't stop for guilt or horror, or the realization that nothing was as simple as they'd told us. We had objectives to take, ground to gain, Germans to kill. But something broke in me in that farmhouse. Some part of me that had been holding on, that had been coping, that had been functioning despite Omaha and the deaths and all the horror. That part just stopped. I kept going, kept fighting, followed orders, did my job. But I was going through the motions now. a machine wearing my skin. The man I'd been, the boy from Ohio who'd enlisted to fight the Nazis, who'd believed in the cause, he died in that farmhouse with those children. The nightmares changed after that. Before, I'd dreamed about Omaha, about drowning, about the bullets, about Lieutenant Harrison falling. After the farmhouse, I dreamed about those children, saw them looking at me, asking why. Why did you kill us? We were innocent. Why? I had no answer. Still don't. A week after D-Day, they finally evacuated me. My wound had gotten infected. I'd ignored it, kept fighting, and it had gotten worse. Started running a fever. Medic took one look at it and said I was done. I had to go back. Part of me was relieved. Another part felt guilty, like I was abandoning the men still fighting. Miller was still out there. The others were still out there, and I was leaving. They shipped me back to England. Field hospital, then a proper hospital. Penicillin for the infection. Surgery to clean out the wound. Weeks of recovery. Physical recovery, anyway. The wound healed. The fever broke. My body mended. But I didn't sleep. Couldn't. The nightmares were too intense. Every time I closed my eyes, I was back on that beach, or in that farmhouse, or watching Patterson die, or seeing the Kansas kid's body. Over and over, an endless loop of death and horror. The doctors called it combat fatigue, battle exhaustion. Said I needed rest, needed time away from the front. They were kind about it. Understood that what we'd been through on Omaha had broken something in a lot of men. But they didn't understand about the farmhouse, about the children. How do you rest from that? How do you recover from knowing you killed innocent people? That in the name of liberation, you destroyed the very people you were supposed to save? I tried to talk about it once. To a doctor, a psychiatrist who was interviewing wounded soldiers. Told him about the farmhouse, about the family. It was war, he said gently. These things happen in war. You can't blame yourself. But I did blame myself, still do. We threw those grenades. We killed them. Accident or not, they were dead because of us. The other guys from my unit, the ones who'd been in that farmhouse, they dealt with it different ways. Some drank. Some pretended it hadn't happened. Some, like Miller, just went cold, shut down emotionally, became efficient killing machines who didn't think or feel. I couldn't do any of those things. Couldn't drink away the memories. Couldn't pretend. Couldn't shut down. So I just carried it, added it to the weight of Omaha, to the weight of all the dead, to the weight of survival. By August, I was physically healed, ready to return to duty. They offered to send me back to my unit. They were in France still, fighting through the hedgerows, pushing toward Paris. I volunteered for a different assignment, couldn't go back, couldn't face Miller and the others, couldn't return to that fighting where every farmhouse might have another family, where every field might bring more death, more guilt, more weight. They assigned me to a supply unit in England, safe job, important job, they said, keeping the army supplied. I'd done my part, survived Omaha, been wounded in action. Nobody would think less of me for taking a rear echelon position. I knew the truth, though. I was running from the war, from the guilt, from the memories, running from who I'd become and what I'd done. The war in Europe ended in May 1945. Germany surrendered. We'd won. The Nazis were defeated. Europe was liberated. Everything we'd fought for, everything we'd died for, accomplished. The celebrations were massive. Victory in Europe Day. Streets full of people cheering, crying, celebrating. I stood in the crowd in London and watched them celebrate and felt nothing. We'd won. But what had we won with? What had victory cost? Not just in lives, though God knows we'd paid enough in lives, but in souls, in innocence, in the ability to believe in anything simple or pure or good. I thought about the men who died on Omaha, thought about Lieutenant Harrison, who'd never even made it off the landing craft, about Patterson and the Kansas Kid and thousands of others. They died believing they were heroes, believing in the cause. Maybe they were heroes. Maybe their deaths meant something. Maybe the liberation of Europe, the defeat of Hitler, maybe that justified the cost. But I couldn't feel it. Couldn't feel anything except tired. Tired and old and empty. I was 22 years old. I felt ancient. They sent us home in the summer of 1945. The war in the Pacific was still going on, but they were sending the European veterans home. We'd done our part. Someone else's turn now. The ship back to America was full of men celebrating, going home, seeing families again, starting their lives over. They sang songs, played cards, talked about what they'd do when they got back. I stood on deck and watched the ocean and wondered if I'd left something behind in France. Something important. Something I'd need to be whole again. I had the feeling I'd never find it. That whatever I'd lost, in that landing craft, on that beach, in that farmhouse, it was gone forever. And I was right. I came home to Ohio in August 1945. My parents met me at the train station. My mother cried. My father shook my hand, that firm grip that said everything he couldn't put into words. He'd been there, in the First War. He understood. The town threw a parade for the returning veterans. Main Street lined with flags and people cheering. They called us heroes, said we'd saved the world, thanked us for our service. I smiled and waved and said the right things and felt like a fraud. Heroes don't have nightmares every night. Heroes don't flinch at loud noises. Heroes don't see the faces of dead children when they close their eyes. But I couldn't tell them that. They needed us to be heroes, needed the war to have meaning, to have been worth the cost. So I played the part. I tried to go back to normal life. Got a job at the steel mill like my father. Married a local girl, Sarah, in 1947. She was kind, patient, tried to understand. But how could she? I couldn't explain Omaha Beach to her. Couldn't make her understand what it was like to run through that water, through those bullets. Couldn't tell her about the farmhouse. So I didn't tell her anything. Just said it was rough, that I was glad to be home, that I wanted to move forward. She accepted that. Everyone did. Nobody wanted to hear the truth anyway. The nightmares never stopped. 30 years later, I still wake up gasping back in that landing craft, watching the ramp drop. Or I'm in the water, drowning under the weight of my equipment. Or I'm in the farmhouse, staring at those children. Sarah learned to sleep in another room. Said it was because I thrashed too much, disturbed her sleep. We both knew the real reason, the screaming. I'd wake myself up screaming and not even remember what I'd been dreaming about. 4th of July was always hard, still is. The fireworks sound too much like artillery, like the bombardment before the landing. The first few years, I'd have to leave town for the holiday, drive somewhere quiet, away from the explosions and the noise. Eventually, I learned to just stay inside, windows closed, trying to block it out. Crowds bothered me too. Too many people, too much noise, too much chaos. I'd start to panic, feel like I was back on that beach, surrounded by death. Sarah stopped asking me to go to church, to social events, to anywhere with lots of people. Easier to just stay home. I had 3 children, 2 boys and a girl, good kids. I loved them, I think, as much as I was capable of loving anything. But there was always this distance, this wall between me and everyone else, between me and the world of the living, because part of me never left that beach. Part of me is still there, still 19 years old, still running through the bullets, still watching friends die. That part never came home. My oldest son asked me about the war once. He was maybe 12, studying World War II in school. His teacher had mentioned D-Day, mentioned Omaha Beach. He came home excited. "Dad, you were there. You were at Omaha Beach. Can you tell me about it?" I looked at him, saw his innocent face, his excitement. He thought war was heroic, thought D-Day was glorious, thought I'd have exciting stories to tell. "No," I said. "I can't." "But, Dad..." I said no. He never asked again. None of them did. They learned that the war was off limits, that I wouldn't talk about it, wouldn't discuss it, wouldn't share those memories. They thought I was being difficult, being stubborn. They didn't understand that I was protecting them from the truth of what their father had done and seen. I followed the news about D-Day over the years, the anniversaries, the memorials, the movies they made. Saw The Longest Day in 1962. Walked out halfway through. It was too clean, too heroic. Not enough blood, not enough screaming, not enough truth. They built a memorial at Normandy, rows of white crosses overlooking Omaha Beach. Beautiful, peaceful place now. The sand is clean. The water is blue. You'd never know what happened there in 1944. I've never gone back. Can't. The thought of returning to that place, even now, even decades later, fills me with dread. What would I feel standing on that beach again? Would I see it as it is now, peaceful and memorial? Or would I see it as it was, red with blood, covered with bodies, a vision of hell on earth? I don't want to know the answer. Sergeant Miller died in 1968. Heart attack. I went to his funeral. Saw some of the other guys from the unit. We nodded at each other, shook hands, didn't say much. What was there to say? We shared something that couldn't be put into words. Shared trauma, shared guilt, shared survival. At the wake, someone started telling stories, war stories, making it sound like an adventure. I had to leave. Couldn't listen to them turn Omaha Beach into entertainment. Couldn't hear them make light of what we'd been through. One of the guys followed me outside. Johnson, I think his name was. He'd been at Omaha, too. Different unit, but same beach, same hell. "I know," he said. "I can't stand it either. When they talk about it like it was a movie." We stood there in silence for a while. Two old men who'd been boys together in hell. "Do you dream about it?" he asked. "Every night." "Me too. Every goddamn night." He killed himself 2 years later. Pills. Left a note that just said, "I'm tired." I understood. God help me, I understood. The nightmares about the farmhouse, about those children, those got worse as I got older. When I was younger, working, staying busy, I could push them down during the day. But when I retired, when I had time to think, to remember, they came back stronger. I see their faces clearly, more clearly than I see my own children's faces sometimes. The mother trying to shield her babies. The children, confused and scared, dead because we threw grenades without knowing they were there, dead because of the chaos of war, dead because of me. It was an accident, people say when I've tried to explain it. You didn't know they were there. It wasn't your fault. But they're dead just the same. Accident or not, intention or not. We killed them. I killed them. That's a weight I'll carry until I die. I'm 75 years old now. Most of the men who landed at Omaha Beach are gone. Each year there are fewer of us. Soon there will be none. The last witnesses to what really happened that day. And maybe that's for the best. Maybe the world doesn't need to know the full truth. Maybe the sanitized version, the heroic version, the Hollywood version is enough. Maybe people need to believe that D-Day was glorious, that we were heroes, that it all meant something clear and simple. But I know the truth. I was there. I saw what it really was. Omaha Beach wasn't glorious. It was slaughter. It was boys drowning in the surf, burning in tanks, bleeding out on sand while we stepped over them to keep fighting. It was chaos and terror and death on an industrial scale. We won, yes. We established the beachhead. The invasion succeeded. Europe was liberated. Hitler was defeated. All true. But the cost, God, the cost. 3,000 casualties on Omaha Beach alone. 3,000 men killed or wounded in a single day. Each one somebody's son, somebody's brother, somebody's future that would never happen. And for what? Yes, we defeated the Nazis. Yes, we saved Europe from fascism. Those things mattered, were worth fighting for. But I can't help wondering if there was another way, if all that death was really necessary, if those children in the farmhouse had to die for liberation, if Lieutenant Harrison and Patterson and the Kansas Kid and 3,000 others had to die on that beach. I don't have answers, just questions that haunt me. People thank me for my service sometimes. When they find out I was at Omaha Beach, they shake my hand, call me a hero, say they're grateful. I nod and say thank you because that's what you're supposed to do. But inside, I feel nothing. No pride, no satisfaction. Just emptiness. Just the weight of all those deaths, all that guilt, all those memories. I survived Omaha Beach. That's what people say. You survived one of the bloodiest days in military history. You must be proud. But survival isn't victory. Survival is just surviving, living with the memories, living with the guilt, living with the nightmares, living as a ghost among the living. The boy who enlisted in 1942, who wanted to fight the Nazis, who believed in glory and honor and heroism, he died on Omaha Beach. Died in that landing craft, or in the water, or on the sand. Somewhere in that hell, he died. What came back was something else. Something hollow. Something broken in ways that can never be fixed. My wife sometimes asks me what I'm thinking when I get quiet, when I stare at nothing for hours. I tell her, nothing. It's easier than the truth. The truth is, I'm back there. Always back there, watching the ramp drop, running through the bullets, stepping over bodies, throwing that grenade that killed those children, living and reliving the worst day of my life over and over until I can't tell anymore where the memories end and the present begins. They call us the greatest generation, say we saved the world, built America into a superpower, did great things. Maybe some did. Maybe most did. But I didn't. I just survived. Made it through the war, came home, went through the motions of living, but I never really lived again. Not after Omaha. That beach took everything from me. Not my life. That would have been kinder. It took my ability to live. My ability to feel joy, to feel peace, to feel anything except the weight of survival. I'm 75 years old. I've lived more than 50 years since D-Day. But in the ways that matter, I died on June 6, 1944, on Omaha Beach. The only difference between me and the 3,000 who fell that day is that their bodies stopped moving. Mine kept walking, kept breathing, kept existing. But we all died on Omaha Beach, every single one of us.